Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Robin James, and I'm with the Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging. And thank you so much for attending our monthly Take a Stand for Caregivers, CEU webinars. And this morning, we're very excited to have a really wonderful speaker with us who came highly recommended. And this topic is very important, which is Grief Share, the journey from mourning to joy. So we will be joined by Mr. Peter Jackson in just a few minutes. Most of you who attend these monthly webinars know that we just have a couple housekeeping items to go over. First, you will get one CEU or continuing education unit for attending the completion of today's presentation. And our CEU provider is Ms. Carlette Smith with HR Options Solutions. There is her email address, carlettcsmith@bellsouth.net. Thank you so much, Carlette, for your continued support of educating professionals and family caregivers on a variety of aging topics. I also wanted to recognize Jeremy Rains, who's providing a lot of our IT support behind the scenes, and he is the manager of all of our Older American Act programs. So thank you, Jeremy, for your help this morning. And just a couple quick housekeeping rules. You must submit a completed evaluation and send it to humanresourceoptions.com. And please use your home address and your personal cell or your landline phone number, not your business address. That's really easy for Carlette to connect you to who you actually are to provide your CEU. You must submit your evaluation no more than 24 hours after today's class. There can be no exceptions to this rule. And then for those of you who are sharing a room for today's presentation, each person does need to register for the class. So please put a note in the chat box and Jeremy will get that chat message and he will make sure that Carlette receives that because we want all of you to receive your CEU. If you're phoning in and you're not on actual Zoom this morning, please also identify your phone number that you called from so that Carlette can do the cross-reference. And then anyone who has not registered and your name or phone number is not on the Zoom report, unfortunately, you will not be able to receive a certificate. You can also email me directly if you have run into any issues, and that is at rjames, that's R-J-A-M-E-S, at m4a.org. So we'll just go ahead and get started. And I just briefly want to remind everybody, Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging, better known as M4A, is one of 13 local AAAs in Alabama. We operate in all 67 counties, and you can rest assured every county in the country has representation to a local area agency on aging. And so as you can see from the map, again, there's 13 of us in Alabama. Every area agency, again, in the country and in Alabama, has what is known as an Aging and Disability Resource Center, or an ADRC. And we really serve as a single point of entry to connect people with long-term care support and services. And there's one easy number in Alabama to call, and it will automatically connect that consumer to their local area agency, and that is 1-800-AGE-LINE. And what really is a good model for this is that if somebody's just calling because they need maybe delivered meals because they were recently homebound, but come to find out that their caregiver qualifies for no cost or low cost medication assistance, because our specialists under our ADRC screens consumers of all ages for all the programs, including veterans benefits, Medicare, counseling, people don't slip through the cracks. So they can be connected to everything that they're eligible to receive. So we always ask consumers of all ages to just start by calling their local area agency on aging to be screened for all the programs and services. Just briefly, these are some of the core programs and services we have, which is the home delivered or congregate meals under our elderly nutrition program. These are federally funded programs, the majority of them. We have Alabama Cares, which is our caregiver support program. Our state legislatures, they, since 2002, we've had the Senior RX or Medication Assistance Program. We do free Medicare and Medicaid counseling We also have a really wonderful federally funded senior employment program, which really serves as a training program for individuals 55 and above. And so that can really be a life-changing program for somebody who's just an older adult looking to maybe supplement their income or learn some new skills in the workplace. We do have a free legal assistance program that's for 60 and above. We do a lot of elder abuse prevention to protect older adults and vulnerable adults from mistreatment. And our largest program is our long-term care support or Medicaid waiver programs, which are home and community-based services brought into the home. Then we also have our ombudsman program, which is the advocate for a resident in a long-term care facility. So these are just some of the main core programs and services offered by a local area agency on aging. It's really easy with our agency. We cover 5 counties around Jefferson. Our senior employment program, we do cover Jefferson as well, but we assist all ages at all stages, and we serve Blount, Chilton, St. Clair, Shelby, and Walker counties. And you can make a very easy online referral with our website. And for those of you who have not visited our website in the last 2 weeks, we've completely revamped our website. So I would encourage you to go visit our website again, and that's at m4a.org. But up in the corner, you can just click make a referral, and a lot of the referrals come through our website. So it's just a really easy way after hours or you as professionals to make an easy referral to get one of your clients or your loved ones some help that they need. I just wanted to remind you that M4A has just spearheaded the Elder Justice Center of Alabama, and we received a lot of financial support from the governor and the state legislature for this. We are having our grand opening June 15th. The building is located in the city of Montebello. We have brought a lot of different collaborative partners together for the grand opening and the ribbon cutting ceremony. And we are also recognizing World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which is also on June 15th. So I encourage you to visit this standalone website at elderjusticeal.org. And please, if you want to be a vendor or you just want to attend this free fun event, you can always email me to get more information, or you could just go onto our website or the other website. So we're really proud. This has been a long time working, about 1.5 years, almost 2 years on this statewide initiative. So we're really happy to actually open our doors to be able to serve folks. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Peter Jackson, who again has come highly recommended. And this is a very important, I think, and timely topic that he's going to go over.
Well, we're going to go ahead and proceed. I'd like to thank everybody for being here today. All you frontline workers are extremely important, and I have a special place in my heart for folks like you in the business or your professional field. My daughter's an RN. As I was telling Jeremy earlier, she's an honors graduate from the UAB School of Nursing, and she practices down at Shelby Baptist and also UAB. So she's a busy gal. But in any event, all of you here have something in common with each other and with me. And I don't know if you can guess what that is, but I'll tell you. And that, of course, is that at one point in time going forward, we're all going to lose somebody. We're all going to lose somebody that is a close family member, such as a spouse, a parent, a sibling, or a child. And that's what Grief Share is designed for. This course is going to help you in your job, but it will also help you in your personal life as well. So we've got a lot of material to cover. I don't expect you to become experts in Grief Share. There's some reference and referral information at the very end that you can utilize to find out more about the program and contact me directly and refer folks to me. But fasten your seatbelts. We're going to go through this pretty quickly. There will be time at the end for Q&A. A little bit about myself. I became involved with Grief Share a number of years ago. I lost my late wife, Kathy, due to a sudden and massive hemorrhagic stroke. And as you all know, hemorrhagic strokes are very debilitating, and really the percentages of recovery are not good. She had a stroke on a Monday evening, and by the time Friday rolled around, she'd lost any residual brainwave capacity, breathing capacity. and motion control, and we had to make the decision to disconnect. And a friend of mine had lost his wife about 6 months earlier, told me about Grief Share. I went through the program and thought to myself, gee, this program really kind of saved my life in a number of ways. And if there's an opportunity for me to share the valuable lessons and the tools and resources that I learned going through the program, I'd take advantage of that opportunity. It came along a couple of years later, and we've been doing the program for close to 10 years now. Around for 25 years. It's recognized as being one of the most highly utilized and successful programs of grief recovery for anybody who, again, has lost a spouse, a parent, a sibling, or a child. There's 4 main components to the program. They're pretty simple. As you can see here, attendance is important. Of course, it's like an investment. Anything that you invest in and concentrate on and put your time and effort into has good return. So we encourage attendance every week. The program is a freestanding program so that folks can jump in the program at any point in time, and they can come in, let's say, on lesson 6 out of 14 lessons and not feel like they've missed something the first 5 lessons that would hinge on lesson 6. So it is a freestanding program. We encourage folks to join at any time, and then they can repeat the semester any lessons that they may have missed, or so on and so forth. There's also a workbook involved, a video, and a group discussion. And you combine all of those elements into about a 90-minute session or so on a weekly basis for 14 weeks. And the progress we see folks make from the start of that program to the end of the program is just incredibly awesome, and certainly gratifying as facilitators and leaders to see that change take place. The objectives for today is really kind of to define the new normal. Explore various challenges of grief, manage the journey from mourning to joy, deal with relationships, which could be family relationships or external relationships, handling the why questions. There's a lot of those, of course, when somebody loses a loved one. Confronting guilt and anger, that for many becomes a part of the process as well. Discover the lessons of grief, answer questions about heaven, and realize what you have to live for after you have lost a loved one. Hopefully the course outcomes then will yield an appreciation for that new normal. You'll know the various challenges of grief and gain a knowledge of the journey from mourning to joy. Understand how relationships may change. Learn how to handle the why questions. Realize the complexities of guilt and anger. Be familiar with the lessons of grief. Become acquainted with questions and answers about heaven, and comprehend what there is to live for after you lose a loved one. And finally, know when and where to refer. And that's that referral list at the very end of the presentation here. That's got a lot of key hotline numbers and web addresses for you. What does grief look like? Well, it's a mess. We all think we'd like to think that the recovery process from start to finish is going to be that smooth line you see on your screen from left to right, but unfortunately, the path you see is that jumbled image on the right of that image, and it involves emotions. Just anywhere from apathy and confusion and anxiety and sadness, and the list goes on. And not everyone has to experience all these emotions, but certainly as part of the process of going through the program, when the participants recognize the fact that there's other folks going through a loss, feeling these emotions, experiencing these emotions, it does set them somewhat at ease. And that's an important element of the program to remember, is that there is no perfect way to experience grief and to move through it. Everyone experiences grief differently. Everyone grieves differently, and the length of grief is different. So that's something really that is one of the key takeaways from the entire program. There is no right or wrong way for grieving. Is this normal? We call it the new normal. Somebody that's had this loss wakes up in the next day, and of course the grief is still there. 30 minutes later, they're still at a bathroom sink, maybe with a toothbrush in hand, and they can't remember their coworker's name as they go through the day. Tears come without warning. There's a knife in their heart or stomach that twists and turns. I of course, personally experienced that. And other people just don't get it. They go about their day as if nothing's changed. And the question, of course, is how long is this grief going to last? They don't know if they can make it. I certainly had the feeling that as I relived that experience of losing my wife and letting her go that last day, that repetitiveness and reliving that over and over and over again, you kind of wonder if you're going to maintain your sanity. So the grief experience is definitely harder than what we ever imagined. We'll become forgetful. People will feel ambushed by simple things like food and pictures and places and smells and music, all these things that they shared with their loved one bring back these emotions. And again, the intensity and duration of their emotions are normal and appropriate because everybody does grieve differently. And crying is not a bad thing. So many folks feel that they need to shield their family members and put up a strong front. But, if you don't experience that grief and cry along with it, you never will get along that journey from mourning to joy and get to that light at the end of the tunnel. So despite how you feel now, or how a person has lost a loved one feels now, Grief Share does provide the tools and resources to enable that grieving person to get to that light at the end of the tunnel and understand that they're not going crazy, although they may think they are. And one of the other things we try and convey throughout the program is that not to make any big decisions once this grief process starts, whether it's house or job or relationships. The whole experience is so intense and chaotic. It's very tempting to get into an area of, selling a home or changing jobs or exiting relationships or maybe starting new relationships if it was a spousal loss. And we just ask that everybody waits a year before they make any big decisions, if it is at all possible. So the pain is overwhelming. I found myself lashing out at friends. Just my emotions were up and down. The proverbial phrase of it being a roller coaster is very accurate. For a day you'll feel good, and the next day you'll be down in the dumps and down in a hole. And it's just an incredible up and down experience. And you go through a lot of what ifs, people losing a loved one experience. What if I had done this? Would it have been differently? What if I hadn't done that? Would it have been differently? What if I had said this or I hadn't said that? All these myriad of emotions are just so complex. And it's just, like I said, it's just a roller coaster. Some of the overlooked yet common effects of grief you have on your mind and body and spirit. People will find themselves physically being affected as well. They'll discover physical pain in addition to the mental pain. But as they go through the program, they'll find that the scar of the loss will eventually heal. And they won't forget their loved one, but that scar will be a reminder, although it's healed. And the emotions and thoughts and feelings that they had that brought them down into that hole and created the tears and so on and so forth. Those same memories of their loved one, when they get to the end of this program, will bring a smile to their face. And they may feel guilty on their first smile or two, but it's actually a sign of progress. But as they go through this grieving process, they do need to make sure that they allow themselves to have that grief time and to not hold back on the grief process. And we provide some direction there as to how they can, if they're not grieving or they feel they're not allowing themselves to grieve, that they can take to help them get through that grieving process and kind of let their emotions go. There's goals to set. For someone who's just lost a loved one, we encourage journaling. Certainly the workbook provides an opportunity to put thoughts and feelings, but a journal or just a spiral notebook, buying a plain spiral notebook and start to record your thoughts and feelings on a daily basis. You can communicate with your loved one if you'd like on that, in that journal. You can just put down your thoughts and feelings. You can talk to God. There's other tools and resources in addition to the journal. Exercising is good. Trying to push yourself into socialization, picking up a new hobby, even a pet if you don't have a pet is helpful. I had a pet family dog that had been with the family for a number of years, and my family was I was an empty nester at the time. I lost my my late wife, and the family pet was a tremendous asset to be there, just to have another living being in the house as I went through that grieving process. People are prone to rush grieving individuals, try to rush them through the grieving process. We try not to let those grieving individuals fall into that trap. Just let that person know that's offering the advice that it's appreciated, smile and say thank you, but don't let it overwhelm you. Again, that pace of grief is yours alone, and something that no one else can dictate or define the expectations for you. There is no length of time. There is an initial shock phase for the first few weeks. That's why we recommend Grief Share beginning after that shock phase, if at all possible. And of course, there's this forgetting that takes place as part of the process as well. People become very, very forgetful. Their mind is very, very abstract, distracted. And although everyone's circumstances, I mentioned earlier, are different and thoughts and emotions are different, they do go through this process of forgetting. We all get up and go into a room from time to time and forget why we got up and went in there. But that experience increases significantly as one is going through the grieving process. There's a need to accept the fact that a person has lost their loved one. That acceptance alone will enable them to move along that journey. Moving forward is important. There is a point in time when people get stuck in grief. We'll talk about that in a minute. This is hard work. Grieving is hard work, and it is something that really is difficult to push yourself through. It's much easier to just kind of stop and withdraw and pull yourself into a hole and not make that effort. But it is work, and that's why the Grief Share program, with its structure, is so good for people to hold on to that and recognize that structure and give them something that they can do on a daily and weekly basis as they go through the 14 weeks of the program, so that they make it to that light at the end of the tunnel. We talked about why it's important to put effort into the healing. Also, there's events that may have surrounded a loved one's death that affect grief. If an event were to repeat itself after the loved one is gone, that may bring up some deep emotions. The program also deals with loved ones' belongings. How do you deal with what someone has left behind? Maybe if it's a spousal loss or a child loss, there's a room or a closet that has to be dealt with. Again, I mentioned a minute ago about being stuck in grief. You heard stories about parents that lose a child and don't touch their child's room. Everything is in place the same as it was the day that they lost their child. And unfortunately, that can go on for a number of years and be a sign of being stuck in grief. I guess the best way to deal with a loved one's belongings is just a little at a time. And there is no right time either. It may be early on to deal with those. It may be later in the recovery process. But there are things that certainly at the point in time where a person is exposed to those and needs to do something with them, a lot of options with respect to where can they go, to family, to friends, to donations, charities. Charities would love to be recipients of many of the things that a loved one is finding that they need to let go of. Friends and family are affected, of course, by the death of a loved one, and sometimes those that have lost a loved one are very surprised on how family reacts to that loss and how their relationship with family takes place. So friendships and relatives and even your roles and responsibilities, because you're probably having to assume things that your loved one did change dramatically. Those all have to be dealt with. You'll find yourself with quiet time or solitude that can be a blessing or a curse. All depends on how it's utilized. And then those friends, again, that don't understand your grief. Those are difficult situations. And most people really don't, quote, get it as to what you're going through unless they've gone through it recently themselves. So, grief in relationships, even family members grieve uniquely. Feelings of intense loneliness that no one understands. All these kind of feelings are there's just a myriad of emotions that you go through. And I think that the best way to get through that with friends and family is to keep in contact with them, whether it's via telephone or email or texting. Just keeping in touch with those friends and family make that transition a little bit easier and make it a little bit easier for them to understand what you're going through as well. Of course, everybody that loses someone usually asks the question, why? Why, God? Why? It seems unfair. Please hear my cry and answer me. They have many questions surrounding their loved one's death, and God wants them to bring those questions to Him, of course. And this program is a Bible-centric program. It is a program that was designed 25 years ago by an organization in Wake Forest, North Carolina, called the Church Initiative. And God is an important element and spirituality is an important element to the recovery process, along with other tangible items that the program provides. But, God wants those losing someone to share feelings with Him. And they may be angry with God. There's nothing wrong with being angry at God. I wasn't angry with God in my loss, but certainly if you're familiar with the Bible, Job became very angry with Job became very angry with God in the Old Testament. And you can ask God questions. Answers may come. Answers may come early on. They may come later. And it may not be until one is in heaven that they get those answers. So it's very important to be honest with God. And it's an expression of faith when someone is honest with God. And know that it's all God's plan. We don't know what He knows, and we don't see what He sees. And I think that just kind of letting go and letting God take care of the situation. He did not take our loved ones to harm us by any means. He had a plan that was best for them and best for us. And, that's something we have to believe in and constantly remind ourselves of as we move forward. Of course, there is that guilt and anger that can come into play. There can be conflicted relationships. And I think that anger is just something that is probably best dealt with if one utilizes that journaling process and kind of, has an opportunity to just let it out on paper and let their thoughts and feelings and emotions go there. Hopefully they have a friend that is a good listener. A lot of people will think to themselves, if only I had insisted that person stay home, maybe if it was an accident, or I knew I should have taken her to a different doctor, or why didn't I tell them I'm sorry? All this regret, guilt, and anger, they're just emotions that create barriers against the peace and healing that is available, particularly that God has available for us. So Knowing that our days are numbered, there's not a lot we can do or could have done necessarily in the process of losing a loved one. And you go down that rabbit trail, it can be very injurious to your own emotions and recovery process. So, but don't be surprised when there is anger at loved ones and anger at those friends and relatives that just have not lost a loved one and don't understand what you're going through. There's complicating factors that affect grief. There's nightmares and flashbacks. I didn't personally experience a lot of nightmares, but there certainly are flashbacks. And as I mentioned early on, there's things that can bring up those memories and create those flashbacks. And we use the terminology being ambushed by sights or sounds or smells or other people or dreams. All these things come back when you least expect them, and you are ambushed by them. So I think the best way in dealing with them is to know that they will happen. And have some type of game plan or distraction or strategy available that will enable you to deal with it, whether it's a friend or just some type of other distraction at home or a hobby. Be prepared for these ambushes. Your thought process too will enable you to get through the whole complicating myriad of factors. Negative thoughts, of course, can yield negative disposition or personal disposition. So remembering the good times and certainly having positive thoughts enhance your opportunities of recovery throughout this emotional trial you're going through. How to prevent getting stuck in grief. It's so easy to get stuck in grief. If you're not careful, 3 to 5 years down the road, your grief can be just as intense and raw as it was when it first happened. People will, and I did this, put together, and there's nothing wrong with any of this, but in the early stages of grief, people will put together what we call shrines. My shrine was simply a very small bookcase with pictures, other mementos, and things that belonged to my loved one. They served as a daily reminder, and they helped get through that grieving process. However, at some point in time, that shrine kind of needs to find a rightful place, not in the main path, so to speak, and maybe put away in a closet or a basement or an attic. An untouched bedroom or closet that remains intact. Eventually, those things have to be dealt with. Being stuck in grief, it manifests itself with continual and cemetery visits, talking about your loved one all the time, working long hours to try and avoid things, or staying home and withdrawing. I mean, so many ways to get stuck in grief, but not isolating yourself and getting out, not avoiding certain people or places that could be reminders of that loss, dwelling on the positives and exploring new relations, hobbies, pets, those kind of things. And again, it's a lot of work to not be stuck in grief. I remember going out to have dinner with a couple that my late wife's and mine closest friends, and I got in the car and headed in that direction and looked at the seat next to me, and it was empty, of course, and pulled off the road and thought to myself, I really can't make it the rest of the way and visit with these folks and have dinner. And we always did that as couples. But I forced myself, got back on the road, got to the house, and had a decent time. It's never as bad as your mind envisions it. So making that effort to get out is incredibly important. Misconceptions that people have about healing: time heals all wounds. Well, I think that as a misconception to a certain extent. It does heal wounds, but there's always that scar left there as a reminder. Um, Progress means taking one step forward, one step at a time. You may take two steps forward and one step backward, but moving yourself forward somehow, again, whether it's through hobbies, relationships, new relationships, whatever, you've got to work at pushing yourself and moving yourself forward. So progress does mean taking those steps forward. Lessening of pain indicates a lessening of love. Is that true? No, that's not true. Lessening of pain is a sign of progress. You're never going to forget that person. You're never going to feel from time to time hurt from that loss. But you have to continually make this effort to move forward. And these tools and resources that Grief Share provides are tremendous to utilize. It's not an easy or smooth path. As I mentioned, it's always a roller coaster ride. You find yourself, like I said, two steps forward, one step backward. Easy to get stuck in those shrines or bedrooms or continually discussing or cemetery visits. But those are all okay in the beginning stages. But the tools and resources that the program provides will enable you to pick up from that point and continue to move forward. Needing help to face the days ahead. I think if you're encountering someone who's had this great loss, encouraging them to take those steps forward and to do the grief work and remain steady as they go. Developing a daily to-do list is incredibly helpful to stay focused. Understanding that various anniversaries and holidays will be very, very difficult. You can help someone through those times if you know when they are. The person that knows of those anniversaries and holidays can prepare for them in advance and maybe find something special to do on those days to divert some of that attention to their loss. Going to church again, if they were churchgoers, many times it's tempting to arrive late and leave early or sit in the back. I think it's probably a good idea for someone to sit with a friend, maybe that will run interference for them and help them interact with people, or identify a place ahead of time at church where they can go if they're emotionally overwhelmed. I ended up having to leave the church that my wife and I attended for so many years. We were so involved with the church and the music ministry there that it just became too difficult. And I think that was part of the moving forward process is I found a new church, and it just enabled me to start my spiritual life fresh again in a new environment. Benefits of helping others. You'll find yourself hopefully being able to provide some of the things that you've heard us talk about today, suggesting those to other folks as they go through their grieving process, so that it can provide some definition to their goals and their daily existence and help them take their mind off of themselves and give their mind a break and allow them to move forward. Make yourself available to these folks that have lost someone. What else can you do? I mean, there's not a lot you can do, but be there for them. One thing that you can do if you have a friend that's lost someone close is give them a gift card to a restaurant. I got some gift cards to restaurants when I lost my wife, and they were great. I mean, it got me out, which we've talked about. It got me out in a group of other people. Certainly didn't have any dishes to clean up, and I didn't have to pay for the meal. So gift cards are a tremendous tangible gift that you can give one, in addition to yourself and being available and letting them know that they can contact you anytime. The first 30 days after a loss, folks can be inundated with phone calls and emails and texts and help, but it's after that first 30 days that things start to wind down. And concentrating on picking up and keeping in touch with that person that's grieving after the first 30 days is very, very important. Additional lessons of grief. Oh, they take on a new persona. Who are they now that their loved one is gone? You don't want to have them have their grief become an identity, but they have to work through and identify what their new roles and responsibilities and identities are. And so we go through this process. They're not going to do it perfectly. They're not going to know what to do. They're not going to know how many phases of grief there is. They're just going to have to experience and move forward through it. And that's where the Grief Share program helps them so much, is to be part of that group that's grieving at the same time, even though the losses may be different as they go through that grieving process. What's heaven like? Certainly, we hope that our loved ones are in heaven. We don't know what it's like for sure. We've got some ideas of what heaven is like, biblically speaking. Some folks that are not as spiritually inclined as others may attempt to communicate with their deceased loved ones through spiritualists or mediums, which is probably not a good idea. They'll also explore other sources of near-death experiences, trying to discover what heaven is like. I think that there's just simply nothing that can be totally understood about heaven except that it is a better place. The Bible says it will be reunited with our loved one in heaven, which is something to look forward to and something to give some peace and comfort to someone that has had that loss. So again, dwelling on the positives of being reunited, dwelling on the positive memories of your loved one, and looking for what's referred to as miracle moments, things that bring those positive memories to mind. One that I had was after, I think, a couple of weeks after my wife passed away, I found a bag of my favorite chocolate cookies that she had hidden, because she knew that if she didn't hide them, I'd end up probably eating them all in one sitting. So she hid them and I found them one day. And that was kind of one of my miracle moments. Also, when I got home from the hospital the first night after she'd had the stroke, there was a miracle moment when I saw a handwritten note that she had left that was in a frame, and it was always there, but it was much more meaningful to me after the loss when I read it. And our pastor from our church in Texas, we were living in Alabama, here in Alabama at the time of the loss. I know I called him, and I know I told him what had happened. And the next thing I knew, he was on a plane headed for Birmingham. Couldn't get a ticket to Birmingham, got one to Georgia, picked up a car in Georgia, drove back to Birmingham, got a hotel room. All these miracle moments, you have to kind of look for them, but they will happen, and that will certainly make the recovery process easier. Going forward, what's next? Where do you go from here when you get through this Grief Share program? What if a person doesn't think they're ready to move forward? In order for the pain to subside, they've got to re-engage in life and move forward. It's a necessity. It is a process, and that's why the tools and resources with Grief Share are so important to utilize. Understanding that peace and pain coexist, recognizing that things will never be the same. There will be a new normal, and there will always be a scar as a reminder, but that scar will heal. And as time goes forward, the pain will be a little less as each day goes on. And not to worry about forgetting about that loved one, but those thoughts and memories that, again, at the beginning of the loss, just brought a watershed of tears. Those same thoughts and memories towards the end of the Grief Share program, are what bring the smiles to the face. And that's when the scar is healing. And you can look at that scar and actually not go down into that hole. How to create a new normal. What is that person passionate about? I was passionate about Grief Share and had that opportunity. And many participants in the Grief Share program find themselves getting into a capacity of a leader of the program, becoming a leader for the Grief Share program. What does that entail? There is a short training course that one goes through. There is a sponsorship that is required. And I'm certainly happy to provide anybody with that information. But that might be something. If the loss is a loss related to maybe a particular disease, that could be a campaign or a program that somebody might become involved with and forge ahead with a program in that area to the benefit of many people. My wife's loss was a direct result of high blood pressure. And at the time, I had no knowledge as to, what the ramifications of high blood pressure were. And we all can, it's so easy, as you know, to monitor your blood pressure. And there's interventions, initial interventions of diet and exercise that can hopefully bring that under control. But if not, there's medications that can do that. And it is life-threatening, but it is so easy if you recognize that you have it or somebody has it. It's so easy to manage it and avoid a catastrophic loss. So, in summary, what have we talked about? Well, we've talked about that a person that has experienced a loss has to grieve. They can't be stuck in their grief. They've got to move forward, and that requires a lot of effort. So you have to grieve. Grieving is not bad. Crying as part of the grieving process is good. And if a person has difficulty with grieving or making themselves grieve or feeling like they can grieve, one of the best ways to get them to grieve, so to speak, is to pull some pictures out. Pictures of your loved one, other mementos. That was a surefire technique for me. And you go through that emotional roller coaster and crying experience for 10 or 15 minutes, and you feel so much better after you come out of that. So it is a catharsis. It is a relief. It is an experience that one has to go through. Don't feel like you've got to hold back just for the sake of family and friends. Everybody grieves differently. We've talked about that. There is no set number of phases of grief. There's a lot of books out there that will say there's 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 different phases of grief. Don't have to go through all those phases of grief. Everybody's path to recovery is different. And that's what a person finds out and discovers in Grief Share, is that everybody does grieve differently. They also find out that time frame for grief is different for everyone. Could be 6 months for someone, could be a year for someone else. They may find that they want to repeat the Grief Share program, which is absolutely not a problem. Many people repeat the program, not because it hasn't been successful for them, but they may have missed a couple of things in the program. I've been through the program 15 to 20 times, and every time I go through the program and watch the videos and go through the workbook, I find something new or different that I missed all those other times. So going through the program a second time is not an admission of lack of success the first time around. It's not a problem to go through the program. We encourage folks to go through the program a second time if need be. There's no additional cost for the program. The additional cost is $20, and that is a one-time charge that provides for the notebook or the workbook to the participants. And remember that, if you are grieving heavily, the more you love someone, the more you're going to grieve. The greater the loss, the greater the grief. It's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. Avoiding those big changes the first year, not changing jobs, not selling houses, not dating if it was a spousal loss. Making yourself available, if you're not the one that's lost a loved one, making yourself available to that person that has, and just touching base with them every now and then, asking them how they are, going out to lunch, just making yourself available. Being prepared with intervention referrals to counselors and psychologists and suicide prevention organizations and hotlines. You know, that's something we've seen a dramatic increase in the last 3 years or so, is an increase in the number of suicides, murders, and drug overdoses. And it's a sad reflection, I dare to say, on society, but it's something we've seen and something we are prepared for in terms of interventions with counselors and psychologists and other hotlines. Understanding that life never will be the same, admitting that that a person is entering a new normal, and that the scar will be there as a reminder, and that they will arrive at that light at the end of the tunnel where they'll manage and control their grief instead of it managing and controlling them. That's one of the key outcomes of this program, is that the overwhelmed person in those initial stages of grief and shock, finding themselves uncontrolled in that grief and shock, these tools and resources that GriefShare will provide will enable them to manage and control the grief rather than the grief managing and controlling them. And that's so important. 2 books that are absolutely tremendous books for someone who's lost a loved one. And I read these books more than once. They're not endorsed by GriefShare, although I'm sure GriefShare would have no problem endorsing them. The first one is Confessions of a Grieving Christian by Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar was a gentleman that was an international businessman, motivational speaker, and author. Any book that Zig has written is just a fantastic read. And this one was about the loss of his daughter. I think she was around 30 years of age, and how he dealt with that. Grieving the Loss of Someone You Love by Ray Mitch. That is a daily book of meditations, just 1 page. 98% of those meditations will apply to the loss scenario, whatever it may be. I went through that. I borrowed that book from a friend, went through it twice, and finally forced myself to give it back to her. It was the book she used when she lost her husband. Fantastic book. References, as I mentioned, call me anytime. I'm available at this number, as I tell my attendees, anytime, 24/7 at 205-908-6529. That's my direct line. I have that phone with me 24/7, and I am available at that number 24/7. Or you can email me, or you can text me at that number as well, or you can email me at FromMorningToJoy@gmail.com. That's FromMorningToJoy@gmail.com. Morning is spelled MOURNING, and the GriefShare website is simply griefshare.org. GriefShare is all one word, .org. And when someone goes to that website, they will see immediately a drop-down box that gives them an opportunity to insert a zip code, and the zip code will then pop up the second screen that pops up will be all the locations where the GriefShare program is being presented, and you can set the parameters from that zip code on out, anywhere from 5 or 10 miles up to 25 miles or so out, and it'll have all the contact information necessary there for someone to get involved in the program. Our programs have been the last couple of years over Zoom. We're hoping this fall to get back to live sessions. Ours will be taking place in September. You'll see something about that coming up in the next couple of slides. There's also some other organizations out there, the Stephen Ministries. That's stephenministries.org. That's another great group that helps folks that are going through grief. There's also in Homewood, where I live, a community grief support, which is pretty well known around the Birmingham area. We work in tandem with them as well. It's a one-on-one support opportunity, and we sometimes refer folks to them, and they sometimes refer folks to us. There's also a hotline for seniors that are going through trying times in their loss. You see that number there, and there's one for teens that are going through losses as well. And finally, just a few more reference. Kids Helpline And we talked about suicide. There's a suicide crisis line there, a couple of them. There's a group called the Addiction Prevention Coalition, because I mentioned so much of this is now we're seeing it related to drug overdoses and addictions. I actually have a representative from that organization speak to my group briefly during the 14-week program. And then the Legacy of Hope, which used to be called the Alabama Organ and Tissue Donation Organization. It's a great group. They speak to my classes as well. And we just participated in an event recently for them. My wife was an organ donor, my late wife, and it was so gratifying to find that her eye tissue helped restore the sight to 2 individuals, and some of the tissue from her knee helped restore tissue to a college student who had torn something, and enabled them to go through that replacement and continue on their scholarship and their soccer playing that they were involved with in college. And Social Security is very, very important for someone who's lost a loved one, because there can be survivor benefits. And it's something that I was unaware of. And there's not only survivor benefits for a spouse, but there's survivor benefits for children as well. There's burial benefits. Don't overlook Social Security. If you tell someone who's lost a loved one 2 things about referrals. One would be Social Security, and of course the other would be Grief Share, because both of those will be so beneficial to them. Our spring class, I said spring 2021, should say fall. Obviously it is fall. Thursday, September 1st, our first class starts at 7 p.m. Again, hopefully live. It's held at Faith Church in Birmingham, which is off Valleydale Road near Caldwell Mill. And again, y'all have my number, I believe, or you can go to that Grief Share website or my page as well to find out additional information about that. So that's it. It's I'm showing 11:58 Eastern time. I'm actually here in Georgia in the mountains on vacation. And glad that there was an internet connection where we could get together with you all. But if you have any questions, I'm going to ask Jeremy and Robin how we go to do that from here, if they're going to chat those in, or how they would manage the Q&A process for that.
Wow, well, thank you so much. That's just a wealth of information. I mean, I was taking through my own journey, life journey, with the losses of my mother and then my father. And I wish that I had known about these kind of tools and resources back then. So thank you so much. If anybody has a question of Mr. Jackson or Peter, just please go ahead and feel free to type it in the chat. Or if you have any comments or.
And I'm not seeing any comments or questions on the Facebook feed, Robin.
Okay.
I would add, though, I did drop several things in the chat box for those that are attending today. We've listed the contact information for Mr. Jackson, as well as information about where these evaluations can be made. Robin will go over that towards the end again, and once she does, I'll repost that link to the evaluation URL whenever she goes over that. But there's several other things within including where to make a referral to M4A, like Robin mentioned earlier, as well as our YouTube channel where all of these end up going. So feel free to check those out while we're still in the meeting.
Yeah, and I did want to let everybody know that we no longer are using the Survey Monkey for our evaluations. Ms. Carlette Smith, you can do your evaluations directly from her website, and Jeremy did post the link there. It's at humanresourceoptions.com/evaluations. So see if we've got any. Okay, we've got some good comments. Great presentation. Thank you so much. I did want to take this time to introduce somebody else who's on here with us today, and that's LaToya Shelton. She's been with M4A for a long time. She actually has a pretty brand new position, which is the manager of our community services division. And M4A has recently appointed me as the full-time director for the Elder Justice Center, still housed under M4A. It is M4A Center, but LaToya will be taking over these monthly webinars, as well as some other marketing responsibilities. And so I did want to let you know that you're in great hands with LaToya, and I just wanted to thank her for all her hard work. And LaToya, you just want to say a couple things?
Sure. Thank you, Robin, and hello, everybody. I look forward to working with you guys in the future.
All right, let's see, we've got, will the website be given here for the CEU? We did, I think Jeremy posted it up there. And Dolores says, can references be put on email?
And I responded to that privately, Robin. We can make sure on a one-to-one basis, if anyone wants to email Robin at rjames@m4a.org, we can make sure we get that sort of information sent out individually. And I did just redrop that evaluation URL, Robin, in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any other questions before we adjourn? Okay, thank you, Peter, so much for your wealth of information and your knowledge, and just taking us through your grief journey. I think is always important to share with others. So I wanted to thank you so much for your time today, and we wish everybody a safe rest of your week. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in June.